Okay, my name's Phil Wittrock, and I'm one of the SIG leads for SIG CLI. This is Mache, another SIG lead, and this is Mengqi, who's one of the maintainers of kubectl in SIG CLI. So we're doing the SIG CLI intro today, and before we get started, I just wanted to poll the audience here. Who's contributed to kubectl? All right. Who's attended a SIG CLI meeting? Who's used kubectl? All right.
Keep my head up. It'll be fun.
Who's used kubectl and decided that the error messages weren't good enough? Okay, about the same amount. That's what I expected. Okay, cool. So Mengqi is going to give the SIG CLI intro and talk a little bit about what our goals are, what we're trying to accomplish in SIG CLI and kubectl, and how to become a contributor, how to become involved, and how we develop things.
Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Mengqi from Google. I have been working in the SIG CLI for over 1.5 years. So I'm here to representing the SIG CLI to give the introduction. So the topic I'm going to cover today have missions, our responsibility, our roles in the SIGs, and our existing subproject and future subproject, and our ongoing efforts, and also how you can get involved and how to contribute. Okay, let's start with our mission. First, our mission is to build kubectl CLI and its friend. For example, customize. I will talk a bit more about this in the future slides. So we want to make kubectl support API extensions, and we want to kubectl support unlimited version SKU. And the second mission is we want to provide SDKs to people who want to build CLI to make their life easier. And the third mission is we want to move kubectl Codebase to be out of the core Kubernetes/Kubernetes repo. So we can have our own development and release cadence. So maybe like we can release bi-weekly. It's much better than like 3 months. And then our responsibility. So the SIG need to develop the roadmap and identify and fund the valuable new subprojects and maintaining the subprojects, including like bug fixing and ensuring the test healthiness. So there are multiple roles in the SIG. First, there are chairs. Chairs are responsible for governing the SIG. And currently in our SIG, our chairs also serves as the technical leads. Our current chairs has Maji. You want to wave your hand to others? And also Phillip and Tony from Alibaba, who is not here. And then we also have members with different privilege for maintainers, aka approvers, so they can LGTM and approve a PR. And for reviewers, they can only LGTM but not approve a PR. So let's talk a bit about our subprojects. So currently, we only have one subproject, which is kubectl. And we are planning to have the customized as another subproject for the SIG. It's still pending and under discussion. So customize is a template-free customized tool of declarative configuration for its application. So basically the idea is so you have a base for your application, and then you can have multiple variant, and then you have a customized .yaml file. You can declarative specify name prefix, labels, and annotations for all the objects defined in your configuration files. For example, if you have a application, you can have a dev version of it, and also have a production version of it. So that's the idea. And there's a link put in the slides where you can find all the subprojects for all the SIGs. So our ongoing effort. So first, we want to we are moving client-side logic to the server side, so we can make the kubectl thinner. So there are two work in progress projects. The first one is a server-side apply, which will take several quarters to finish because it's complicated. And then we have the server-side printing. We are going to finish this work in this quarter, and it will be turned on by default in the 1.11 release. And the second effort is we are develop libraries to handle unstructured objects, so we can avoid tightly coupled with the Kubernetes types, so which is a good thing for us. And the third, we are making kubectl works with extensions and version skew. In terms of API extensions, we are going with open API schema-based approach instead of using the static Go struct. And we are also using the sub-resource. And then we are also building CLI extensions, aka plugins. So it's currently in alpha state. We have proposals to continue improve this framework. For the people who want to learn more details about all of this, you are welcome to go to the SIG CLI deep dive session, which is hosted by Phillip on Friday, 11:10. So how you can get involved? So you can join the Slack channel, which is SIG-CLI. You can also join the Google group mailing list. You can post and discuss questions there. And you are also welcome to join the SIG meeting, bi-weekly SIG meeting, which will be 6 p.m. Denmark time. And you can introduce yourself in the SIG meeting, let us know you.
Are we doing that today?
No, next week.
Next week? Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So let's talk about how you can contribute. So before you contribute, you need to learn a bit how to write Go code and sign the CNCF CLA. And you should also understand some basic Kubernetes concepts. For example, you need to know what is a pod, what is lifecycle, and how does the service work. And it's also strong recommended to understand the different object management model. So there are two different models. One is declarative, the other is imperative. So in Kubernetes, we recommend to use the declarative model. And in kubectl, kubectl apply is using the declarative models. So all the others are using the imperative model. So our code base. So the CMD slash kubectl is the entry point of kubectl, but there are not a lot of code there. Instead, most code lives in the PKG kubectl code. So be sure to be familiar with it to contribute. And then let's talk a bit about the GitHub workflow. So to contribute, you need to familiar with our GitHub workflow. So first, you need to fork the repo and then make changes to your local repo and then run the test, make sure all passing locally, and then send the PR and get reviewed by the SIG reviewer and get your LGTM, and then get approved by the SIG maintainers and get your approved label, and ensure the pre-submit is passing. So then the merge bot can merge the PR into the upstream. Even though the kubectl code base is still in the Kubernetes/Kubernetes repos, we are tracking our issue mostly in Kubernetes/kubectl repo. The issues there are often labeled with size small, medium, large, extra large. That means you need to commit a different amount of time to work on different size issue.
Your hours may vary, but the relative numbers should be somewhat correct.
Yep. The issues are also often labeled with different type. For example, there are cleanup types. That means you usually need to refactor some package library. And there are also documentation types, which means you are going to write a doc.go file for some existing package. And also there are features, means feature requests. Usually you need to write a new library, and there are bug types and also test coverage, which means you will need to audit the existing test and write more test case to increase the test coverage. So for the new contributors, we recommend you to start with a documentation issue or a test coverage issue, because that's easier to get your PR merged, and you can also be familiar with the contributing process. And you are also welcome to find the code that doesn't have a test and add test for them. To get started, you need to adopt an issue. So for the new contributor, there are also labels labeled with help wanted and good first issue to start with. So we recommend you to do some research before you start. And then please make sure you comment on the issue to let others and SIG maintainers know you are working on that. This can help prevent multiple people working on the same issues. Then for the more experienced contributor, you can adopt harder issues, for example, a new feature, or a big refactoring task. So sometimes you will need to write a design doc and present in the SIG meetings and discuss with the SIG maintainers and the other members. And you also need to provide at least weekly update on the issue. So you can let the SIG maintainer knows what is the status and if you are stuck. And if you are stuck, feel free to reach out to the maintainers to let them know and help you. You can use either a Slack channel or mention them on GitHub. So there are multiple teams, GitHub teams. You can escalate if you need. For example, there are feature requests. If you want to submit a new feature request, you can mention that so related people will know. And also, if you want to get more attention on your PRs, you can mention SIG CLI PR review. So for people who are interested in do or host summer interns, there are multiple programs. First is CNCF is working with Google Summer of Code. The second is the Outreach program. So you can find the links in the slides if you are interested. So there are some general tips can make your PRs moving faster. So first, try to make your PR smaller so a reviewer don't need to reserve a big chunk of time to review a giant PR. And second, write tests. So there are 3 kinds of tests for kubectl: unit test, E2E test, and also CMD test, which is a test writing a shell script. And also, it's recommended to write document and comments in your code, so it will be easier to maintain in the future. And then there are some resources. There are some links in the slides, contributor guide and contributor checklist, and also our SIG CLI meeting note. And also you can find the recordings in the document in the doc. Okay. Anyone have questions? So.
Yeah, that would be great.
Could you comment a bit on the different, I guess, rights and responsibilities of exactly needs to be a reviewer or maintainer or whatever?
Yeah, excellent question. So I'm actually on the steering committee and did some of the work on the charters for SIGs. So I'm probably a good person to ask about this. The direction we're planning on heading there is SIGs come up with their own charters and define their own roles. And there's some basic ones such as reviewer and approver, which are well established and kind of well known. And we plan on most SIGs keeping those roles. Some SIGs like SIG release have additional roles such as related to making sure upgrade tests remain healthy or burning down issues or that sort of stuff. And so across the project, we anticipate that different SIGs will adapt new roles, and they won't be static. In SIG CLI specifically, one role we're looking at adding is a role for health of the project, like build copying, for instance, is one thing where we have these test dashboards that have our tests, but we don't have anyone responsible for reviewing those and making sure they're healthy. And in the past, we had build crop across the project, but it didn't scale. And so we're thinking about, okay, well, maybe we need a special role to allow people to contribute in the form of keeping those tests healthy, but maybe they're not reviewing code or something like that if they don't have time to. Does that answer your question, or what were you looking for in the roles?
Full disclosure, I work on a Kubernetes extension project, not really any of the core SIGs, and we're considering moving to the way the core SIGs do things in Kubernetes containers. So I meant specifically like the difference is between a reviewer and maintainer. For instance, what's the difference between LGTM and something and approving it?
I see. So specifically between those two roles, the difference there is the approvers are meant to be sort of pseudo tech leads, right? And who are familiar enough with the code base to say, yes, we do want to accept this feature, and yes, this does not have any weird semantical issues that you'd have to have a lot of experience with. And the reviewers are intended to be there to kind of the first line of defense and make sure that someone takes a look at it, just because we're constrained on folks who really understand the code base. So the real difference between those two roles is just an amount of experience. And the difference between an LGM and an approval, effectively, I think that's changed over the time, so there's some confusion over that. It used to be, I think the intention was that you could LGTM something and then approval was different for some reason, and I think that got changed to be, okay, if you LGTM something in your approver, now it's approved.
So I'd say like kind of the soft definition that I usually look at is like the LGTM is like this code, I think this code is good, and then the approval is kind of like, okay, I've looked at who actually did the LGTM. I kind of trust them. Maybe I've looked at it myself a little bit too cursorily. So like the LGTM is like, if you LGTM something, it should be like you've gone through and you've read through and you think it's good, and then the approval is like, okay, all the people who LGTM'd it, I think they probably did a decent job, and I've looked through it at a glance myself as well. I'm gonna prove it because I think the review has gone on is sufficient to go in. That's oftentimes what I see happening in the Kubernetes project.
Yeah, I'll just repeat the first part of what you said because it might not have been picked up on the recording, which is that the LGTM is a soft approval, but generally considered good enough on the code level basis, and then an approval comes in as kind of like assumes that if the LGTM is there, that it's been reviewed sufficiently, and it's just checking the box to make sure that the direction more cross-cutting organizationally. Maybe another metaphor is like sometimes when you go into the dentist, like you spend a lot of time with the first person, and then the dentist comes in at like the very last minute and just looks at the X-rays, and they're like, okay, yeah, and then leaves. Cool. You and then you.
Yeah, I have two questions. Number one, I don't quite understand your third kind of test, the CMD test. I understand about unit tests. I understand what utility tests are. I have no idea how I would write them. And I don't know what the CMD test are. You said there's 3 kinds.
This slide.
Yeah, this slide. So the CMD test is mostly a feature test that is right in the shell script. It is require live clusters. So it's basically it's trying to operate on live clusters to trying to mock what people will do with this feature.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
How's that different from ETE?
Is the command test the test.sh test? Here, Maciej.
We're actually heading to rewrite the test significantly. But here's how you can think about it. The unit test is literally white boxing whatever the command is doing, and whatever gets in and the output, you should be verifying that it is exactly as you expected. The object that the parameters you put in are actually producing the object as you imagined. The command can be thought as an integration test because it sets up a limited Kubernetes cluster. By that I mean there's only API server. There's no nodes behind it running anything. So you can invoke commands. They will be propagated in the API server as they would normally, but there's no pods running behind it. So the majority of them are just invoking regular kubectl commands and verifying that whatever you intended is actually happening on the server. And the E2Es are written in Go. They aren't invoking the kubectl commands, but they're actually invoking against a live, fully working cluster, where a pod will be spin up for you, or a resource that you define, and then you're verifying if the actual output of the command, including the full scope of the command or full scope of your invocation, is happening on the server.
CMD is basically ETE-like.
It's a limited E2E-like, yeah. But the CMD is the one that will be rewriting with the SIG testing. Does that?
And then my follow-up question sort of kind of rolls into that. Do you have the resources to help someone who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed to maybe spend some personal time with them? Maybe, I don't know, in terms of mentoring or something like that, because I find that a lot of people, their biggest hurdle to becoming a contributor isn't so much that it's hard, but that they think it's hard. And I feel like an hour of, I don't want to say hand-holding, but an hour of just direct personal interaction might totally take care of that. I don't think I'm just speaking for me, but I am definitely one of those people.
Yeah, I think that's not a unique feeling. I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed. I think I feel overwhelmed much of the time. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I've helped numerous persons with all different types of code within the entire code base that I'm involved in. So the easiest way is just reach me out on Slack and be persistent. I might sometimes not respond due to so many different stuff. But if you're persistent enough and you get me there, I'll help you go. If you need a hangout or whatever, we'll do so. If a discussion on Slack is sufficient for you, that's perfectly enough. I've helped a friend of mine with writing create job command. I've helped Julia Evans helping up creating her first cron job fix PR. And then again, a friend of mine from Red Hat is pinging me very consistently about some other set of command that he's trying to fix. I'm not saying that my advice will be good. I'm just a human. I make mistakes. There was one that was super big, and I was so ashamed. But yeah.
What was it?
Nah. it involves the create job from cron job. But generally, yeah, it's not a problem. Just reach out on Slack. Our Slack is not that busy, so it's pretty quiet. The mailing list is pretty quiet. Eventually, I don't see any problems with doing something like that during the SIG meeting as well, if there will be enough interest in actually doing some kind of this is how we work with stuff or create stuff. We can do, I don't know, a 15, 30-minute walkthrough, either fixing issue or actually coding something within a sample command. If people will be interested, yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm available too on Slack. I'd like to echo Maciej's point where there's like weeks at a time where I probably am going to be DOSed. Slack, I think, is the best approach for everyone. The important thing is you want to @mention someone. If you just put it in the chat channel, like I don't think there's a lot of people lurking there. Yeah, would it be? Do you know of a bunch of people, like, or is there like a community of folks looking for help that we're not aware of?
I don't know, possibly, but if so, I'm unaware of them as well.
Okay.
I can put out my feelers, sure. It kind of sounds like you want more people and need more people.
We definitely want more people, and we're trying to understand like how we're going to scale.
You could start a thread on the mailing list and some sort of sign up do with that, and we'll see how many people will be interested in it, and then we'll just include that in the meeting or something like that.
And the new contributor Slack.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely stick out in the room to see what happens.
The other thing is, I think Paris has a onboarding program.
Group mentoring, that's sort of where I was hoping this could connect.
Yeah, so what might be best is, if you're like really interested in it, is to possibly have someone from SIG CLI to be determined could act as a mentor in that program, and then potentially individuals could get both the support of us, but also the other folks in the internship or mentorship.
Yeah, and I mean the idea is to have like a positive Ponzi scheme and keep having more people underneath to keep rising up. Anyway.
Exactly. I'd love to start a Ponzi scheme. Kube control is a Ponzi scheme. Yeah. It's gonna go in some like press release somewhere. SIG CLI Lead says Kube control is a Ponzi scheme. All right. Any other questions?
I regret saying this.
Cool. How much time do we have? Just about.
I think it's
All right.
Yep.
One more question?
I saw you have plans for extensions magically from the API server, from the active API piece, like an extension, and also from plugins stuff. Is there any plans for making CRDs magically extendable?
Yeah. So I'm going to go deep into this during the deep dive. That's almost what the whole deep dive is about, how we're going to support version skew and how we're going to support extensions. And API server aggregation looks a lot like the core, so specifically CRDs. When you say working with CRDs, what specifically do you mean? Because some things work with CRDs, like apply works with CRDs.
Well, I mean, like if you add more verbs.
Like which verbs? Do you mean custom? Or do you mean can you add a custom verb like logs, but for something else for your CRD? Yeah, excellent question. I don't think that's the lowest hanging fruit for us right now. Like, I think if you want to just have a CLI command to do something on a CRD, distributing your own CLI. I think we need to figure out what the benefit you get over having it in kube control Is it just the visibility, like you can run kube control and it's under it?
It's less burden to maintain stuff. Like Git is a good example of a plugin model that really works well. Something has to be Git dash something, and you have to get folded.
Get reward. So we want to focus, so the server-side stuff that we're moving all the way to the server, so the get and the apply, that will improve the user experience that people have with the kubectl. Because out of the box, the get will print nicely how your CRD looks like, and you as a CRD author can define what will be the output of a get command. Apply should work without a box. That's not a problem, even currently. For more specific CRD targeted commands, verbs, then I think that our direction will be to just go with the plugin. We will be focusing hard on providing the library and the framework for people to build the plugin so that it's easier. Currently, it's not that simple, not that straightforward. So this is where we will be more focusing on to provide the same building blocks that we use in kubectl for other folks. And that would be the core focus that we will have over the next couple months.
I'd also imagine that, like, as we see support for custom sub-resources gradually improve in CRDs, because like the other way you can go with verbs is with custom kubectl verbs is not making them anything special, right? Like kubectl scale these days, for instance, now that we've finally gotten there, is just invoking the scale sub-resource. So I could see, like, and that's like something that's hypothetically you could do something similar with aggregated API servers today, where it's easy. I'm going to use the term easy in quotes here, to add new sub-resources. You could reflect that into kubectl. And as of today, it's really only possible to do that with scale and status on CRDs. Those are the only sub-resources. But I'd imagine that if we see that situation improving in CRDs to where the point where you can do more complex sub-resources in CRDs, then that provides another path for kubectl.
Yeah, that was mentioned yesterday during the custom sub-resources for CRD is
Wrapping it up. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll see.
There's a couple other mechanisms that I'll discuss during the deep dive. But yeah, the running server-side code that actually does the stuff, and then dynamically having kube control discover what those verbs are and adding them is something we're exploring. Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.